Hey everybody, JD Thomas here, and I just wanted to wish you all, as we head out into this New Year's Eve celebrations, a very safe and enjoyable time. And I wanted to talk a little bit about something that most of you will be doing, and you'll be watching a ball drop to signify the coming of the new year. And there is a lot more background and history into this than a lot of people understand. And if you know me, you know that I'm a geek. I'm a lifetime learner. I love to know the history of things. And history is just a bunch of things that have happened to get us here. And with the ball drop, it's no different. And to me, it's really fascinating. And I just thought I'd share it with you. The ball drop is about history, both in time and location. Now, we've known about time for as long as we've been sentient. We've our first sundials dated back to the 1500s BCE, back into Egypt, and they measured the solar day, and that's what we just call a day today. It's when does the sun hit noon at the very top of us, where we are, and they've been around for a long time, and we've tracked them and used them locally to determine the local time. Now, the first mechanical timepiece that we know of was developed by Archimedes in the 3rd century BCE. And there have been various versions over that in time, and it's developed, and it became clock towers, which really started popping up about 1270. And they became a big part of major cities. They would have a bell which would chime and allow people locally to know what time it is, and they could set their day to it. There were even smaller clocks, but for the most part, the clocks didn't shrink down until Christian Huygens, inventor, astronomer, mathematician, genius. In 1656, he developed the smallest and most accurate chronometer at the time. It was a clock. And he made it small and accurate with the new technologies that have been around. And it helped revolutionize time. It became more commodity for something that everybody could have. It still lacked precision, though. Now, our story, this is where location comes into play, because we've known for a long time that the divisions of the globe, from the equator, the lines of latitude, whether north or south, we knew where we are in location of the planet. And we've known about this since 600 BCE. The Phoenicians used to use latitude to determine when they were traveling. Now, knowing longitudinally, latitudinally knows is where you are north or south of the equator. But longitudinally, knowing where you are depends on knowing when you are. So navigators, sea navigators, were the ones that were ravaged most by this lack of knowledge, this inability for man to know when they are and where they are west to east of each other. And navigating the ocean for thousands of years, seas and oceans, has been a very, very fraught expense. And ships were lost and damaged, destroyed, and people lost their lives. And it became a very important, very big part of the British naval issue back in the 1700s. And it culminated when they lost thousands of people and thousands of men in shipwrecks. And the British monarchy in 1714 said, we're done with this. We need someone to figure this out. And they put up a prize. And at the time, it was £20,000 or $6 million in today's value. And they said, figure this out, somebody. And attempts were made to solve it. But it wasn't until 1761 when John Harrison, an engineer, had come up with the most accurate chronometer to date. It kept track within a second in a month. And that was huge. It's still big today. Most watches today, you'd see in the old heist films, that they'd say, synchronize your watches, because watches can lose time very easily. But this chronometer was so accurate. And what it helped to do is it allowed the British naval fleets to know what time it was relative to England. And so they became far more accurate in navigating. And the 1700s is really when the British Empire really exploded and really became a dominant force. And it's because of that. It's also because of that Greenwich Mean Time became zero meridian. Zero mean time for everybody else around the globe, because it was Greenwich where John Harrison helped develop it, and that's where the biggest minds of the day in Britain were. And so that became the longitudinal zero, and that became this starting point. So now that we've established the longitude and gotten that out, there was still a little bit of a problem. So you would be on your ship, and your ship wouldn't dock at a port. It would dock outside where it was safe, where these big ships didn't have to worry about reefs and corals and all sorts of other problems that meet shallow waters. So if you see in Pirates of the Caribbean, you see the ships on dock, and then they throw anchor, and then they row themselves in. So if you were a navigator of a ship at the time, you would have a watchman who would sit on the shores and try to get the time from the local establishments. And they had the church bells or the watch bells and clock bells that would ring. But when you're farther out, and the sounds of the waves and ocean and wind and all sorts of other problems, and sounds doesn't travel quickly, that made for errors, and errors in time meant errors in space and distance. So that meant for still problems. Well, a British captain, Robert Watchup, and I hope I got his name right, in 1818 decided what we should do is at the port, they would drop a ball down a mast. And by the time they hit the bottom, that was exactly noon. So if you're out at sea, you can take a look, you can see it. Okay, set my chronometer, done. Not perfect. If it was cloudy, foggy, rainy, there were problems, but it was a lot better. So many town squares actually started developing this, and they started having these all around the cities, and not just on the ports. And it was really helpful to help the navigators understand this and what they were doing. So the problem still existed that longitudinally, there was still discrepancies in time. Different ports, different cities, and even in the railroads, once we got into the 1800s, we still had problems with time locally. We knew how to set it, we knew how to synchronize it, but globally, how did we know what time it was? Senator Stanford Fleming, Canadian engineer, was having a problem. He was frustrated by waiting many hours for a train one time. And in 1883, he said, I'm done with this. And he standardized the time zones globally so that we would know what time it was for each other, no matter where we were on the globe. So he enabled us to set time zones globally, knowing everything where we were. It was done. So that left a little bit of a problem, that these ball drops, which had started developing in cities all around the world, they weren't using them as much. The town clocks were ringing, everything was accurate. But it was Adolph Oerks, who was the owner of the New York Times newspaper in 1907, who decided, we've been doing the fireworks up from the top of our building for years, and it's been a great draw. But what if we could get people more interested? What if we could count down and watch this ball drop? We could reuse it. Instead of noon, we have it at midnight. And we're going to have everybody gather around, and they'll count it down. Great PR campaign. I'm in PR, so I love this. And so it became a thing. They started doing it. People started gathering, millions of people. And now here we are, over 100 years later, seen by billions of people, over 1 billion people around the world. The ball drop has come to signify the coming of the new year. So here we are with this simple technology, this very simple thing of a ball dropping, we count down, but the history behind it is so fascinating. And that's what I love. And I hope this was as interesting to you as it was to me. It's a lot of information packed really tight, but I wanted to let you know, when you're doing this, just take a moment to think about the history in something like this. When you're watching that ball drop, and how amazing it is that we get to this point where it's just this arbitrary thing, but it brings us all together in more ways than one. Happy New Year. Looking forward to seeing more of you and being with you in the new year. Be safe, be well, and take care.